Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Ji, if you just like to join me, I've just sent the link. Apologies for the delay. Some WhatsApp, if that's okay.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Can you hear me loud and
Vaheguru
clear?
Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Ji, thank you so much for joining me. And I do apologize for the delay. We're here. You can hear me clearly now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Brilliant. So I'm just sharing the YouTube link. It's on Sikh PA Facebook. I'm going to just put it out on Twitter, and then we can get the conversation going. How are you this evening?
Not too bad, not too bad.
Great stuff.
All is good. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Can you hear me loud and
Vaheguru
clear?
Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Ji, thank you so much for joining me. Sorry, where's that coming from? I do apologize. Is that my delay? We're here. You can hear me clearly now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Brilliant. So I'm just sharing this. 1 second, I have to figure out why that's happening. Facebook.
just
I'm going to just put it out on Twitter, and then we can get the conversation going. How are you this evening?
Not too bad, not too bad.
Great.
Right, maybe because I had my laptop running in the background. How is that?
I think so. I think we're good now. Okay, I'm just sharing it on Instagram now to make sure everyone can tune in with us. Actually, I can do that as the conversation's going. So, okay, formally now, apologies for any sangat that are tuning in for the delay. But Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Jasveer Singh, and I am the Senior Press Officer of the Sikh Press Association, and I'm here speaking with Chaz Singh, who I describe as a respected UK Sikh community figure, known for various types of seva, but today we are discussing his work in the political sphere, and specifically about the hashtag the Sikh vote and why he is running as an independent candidate in upcoming local elections in Plymouth and the benefits of that. So, first thing first, just to get the ball rolling, Chaz, if you tell us about the upcoming election which you are involved in, why you are involved in it, and what you are hoping to achieve from it.
Yeah, so I've decided to stand as an independent candidate in the local elections here in Plymouth, United Kingdom. And in a city where there are only 96 Sikhs
96.
individually.
That's a lot more. I remember when it was just you and one other person when we started these conversations many years ago. So
many years ago. So we've kind of accumulated a few more Sikhs, as they say. But even in the constituency that I be standing in, there are no Sikhs there at all whatsoever.
wow.
So my appeal and my outreach is really to the wider community, to the non-Sikhs out there, and basically to show them that actually you can have representation without the party affiliation. Now, I was previously a member of a political party and resigned from there, but for me, I still think I can achieve just as much as an independent as I would maybe from a political party. However, the biggest positive from there as an independent is that there are no whips, there is no toeing the party line. And for me, I will speak for the residents of the ward that I will be elected to serve in, if successful. So my interest really is for the improvement and for the betterment of the residents' lives for those who choose to elect me. And that's why I'm standing.
So just a bit more about the election. So this is for a local councillor in Plymouth Haverstock, is it?
Yeah, so the area is in the southwest of England. It's just over 250,000 population. Projected is about 265,000. 14th largest city in the country. 14th or 15th is what they say. And local elections, 1/3 of the 57 councillors will be up for re-election. So 19 councillors will, 19 wards are up for grabs. And what will be interesting is those who will be elected this year will have a 2-year term. And then in 2026, we will have all out elections, which is going to be fairly new and fairly challenging, I think, because Plymouth doesn't like change. And when you're going to have a ballot paper with 6 different parties, 3 different individuals, already you start doing the maths and you'll have almost like a wallpaper sample of a ballot paper, which, in the bigger elections, where there are more people standing, more parties standing, it gets confusing. And I think that's going to be a real challenge in terms of embracing that change for this city.
It definitely sounds confusing. Just last thing on this, so that the election date actually is on when?
Thursday, 2nd of May. So polling stations will be open from 7 a.m. in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, which is probably the same across the country. So 2nd of May is local election day for United Kingdom.
And so good luck to you then, and any of the Plymouth listeners that are listening, they at least know a little bit more about why you are standing. But we're going to get a lot more into it now. The first thing I would like to ask you is actually about your own journey into politics, because I'm well aware that you do Seva. You've been involved in Langar Seva. For those that need it out on the streets, you have been involved in Seva for representation in World War tributes for the Sikh for the Sikh nation, and ensuring that we get that kind of representation. But tell us about your political journey. How did you get involved in politics? Why did you get involved in politics? And how have you ended up as an independent candidate after previously being a bit of a stalwart for a particular party?
Yeah, so I think if we kind of rewind the clock, when I moved to Plymouth, and that was nearly 22 years ago, leaving Birmingham, a very diverse metropolis of a city. And, landing in Plymouth suddenly made me realize how visible I could be and how visible Sikhs are. And as we said earlier, in those days, we was only a handful of people according to the local and the national census. Being engaged and proactive in community engagement, I think, is what kind of drew me nearer to being and having a political voice, looking at it and thinking, we keep fighting as individuals, we keep raising the same questions. How do we turn those questions or those words into actions? How do we make things happen without having to lobby all the time? And I somehow looked across the political groups and sort of said, this party has similar values to the values I have, and the values that I would want to engage with this movement. And that said, 2008, 2009, I decided to join a party. Joined the party, became very active in terms of getting out there, speaking. I mean, I had no problems with engaging in a predominantly white community, because back then Plymouth was only, it was probably in single digits in terms of how diverse it was. And now we're in double digits. So they say about 12 or 16% is from a diverse background. So we're still behind in terms of ethnicity, representation, diversity. And one of my biggest things, I think, has always been, why can't someone like me be sat at the table to make those decisions? Why can't someone like me be able to influence or instigate or drive a direction or steer the way something should be going? And I think that was the key thing for me, being able to have an influential voice, even if it meant I stood on my own, but to drive that message through and influence others to say that actually you haven't been able to drive this message yourselves, but now someone is coming there. Are you going to support me in making sure that message can be brought forward? And whatever ambition or aim and whatever we want to go out and achieve, we can make it happen. So that's where I think my initial journey started, by being able to turn around and say, I want to make a change.
So from there, like you said, you were looking to connect with a party that perhaps shared similar values to yourself. And so you joined the Labour Party. Tell us
Mhm.
about that, and tell us also about then how you've gone from being a part of the Labour Party to stepping away.
Yeah, so I had 2 terms that I served as a Labour councillor. And I think what's interesting is when I first joined and first started knocking on doors and engaging with the wider community, I remember one of my first experiences where when I went to knock on the doors and somebody turned around and said, "We don't want any more restaurant menus," you know, thinking this person is knocking on the door and they're trying to say, order from our restaurant. So it was trying to overcome that barrier first, because I I I am the first Sikh person to be a member of a party here in the Southwest and put a message out there, So there was that challenge, and I think the party had to overcome their fears of someone like me coming into the arena, which was really interesting. And because there had been previously one other or 2 persons of color, and this is way back in the day. So they had 2 councillors. One of the oldest councillors was called Claude Miller, and he retired at 99. He was awarded the MBE for his services to the community. And what was interesting was that was probably the only person of color who had been a member of the party and been active in terms of what they were doing. So coming up from the forefront and being of a Sikh background, I think it was a challenge to the party as to how they would embrace that.
Very
And then,
interesting that it was a challenge for them as much as it was a challenge for yourself.
of course, I think, when I look back and I sort of like think, this is, I mean, I used to say to people, imagine Plymouth was what Plymouth was when I moved here. It was probably similar to when our parents moved in, but the added advantage we had was that we could speak the language. We
Mm.
were one step ahead, if that makes sense. So in terms of us landing into Plymouth and suddenly going, and this is our new home, was was a personal challenge as well as it was an acceptance challenge. And I think, even within the party, trying to get them to understand that actually I'm proud of who I am, and my turban makes my identity, my culture, my history, my heritage. These are all things that I am proud of, and I'm not going to, even back then, if I'd have thought, 8 years later, I'm going to have a big fallout with this group of individuals or this political group, those things still stayed dear to me, and they were absolutely part of me, my history, my heritage, my culture, because you cannot undo what we have done for this country. But what I can do is tell people what we have done. And I'm not going to shy away from sharing and educating and raising awareness of those things that we have done, previous generations. There's no way that I can let that go and start fresh. It has to be from where we are, even if I, revert back to, say, the days of Maharaja Ranjit Singh to Maharaja Dalip Singh, and then looking at where we've come from there to where we are now.
So you've stepped into this arena now where you've connected with the Labour Party and you're facing challenges for them to know that you are someone that's going to openly advocate for your community, your background, your heritage. That's exactly part of the reason you're in politics now. How did it go for you? Because previously you've been was it a deputy mayor of Plymouth as well? So tell us about that journey and how all of that went.
Yeah, and I think the other thing also is that even though I have that, Sikh identity and in it, and I say to a lot of people here, the added advantage is that even if you put me in a crowd of 125,000 people, and I try and explain Savalak to them, and I say that you will still be able to identify who a Sikh is. But the important bit was, I think also that I became a voice of many other communities. So be that most recently the work I'm doing with the Romanian community, the
Oh, wow.
Bangladeshi community, the much wider community, and not just sat here in Plymouth, but in Bristol, in other areas, even being awarded by United Sikhs because of the work I was doing here within the wider communities, and showing that you can still maintain your identity and still fight for your cause at the same time, as well as helping others and giving them an opportunity to share that platform, is what we may call, sharing that good practice, but being able to say, actually, from a Sikh perspective, this is what we do. We look at enabling, we look at supporting, we look at raising others and their profiles so they can also share that platform. When the Lord Mayor was selected, and he's recently passed away, he was such a lovely guy. And the Lord Mayor, he approached me and he said, the city is changing. We have to embrace that change. Would you like to become my deputy? And I
Wow.
was
So
sort of
they
like thinking,
sort you out. That's interesting.
it's such a big decision, and to be asked that as well was quite huge in terms of being in the city in 2002, and 10 years later, all of a sudden, I've been asked to become the deputy Lord Mayor. And looking back at that journey, and I still say to people, who'd have thought, that I could come into this city and do all those things, talk about equality of opportunity. Here was something, and then I'm looking back and thinking, actually, when I talk about, being sat at the table, making those decisions, there I was all of a sudden to be able to make those things happen, to go and interact with the wider networks, the wider organizations. And one experience as Deputy Lord Mayor I'll always remember was when I was asked to do and say a few words at what they call the drumhead service. And we have a big wide open space called Plymouth Hoe here. And they asked me to say a few words as a Deputy Lord Mayor. And I actually went to Bhai Sahib Mahinder Singh to just ask and say, where should I take, or where should I draw inspiration from to say the few words that I want to say at this drumhead service? And I think it was reported in the press to say that maybe this was the first time ever a Sikh was saying words at an Armed Forces Day, but more importantly, at the drumhead service. So those things were huge. And even in the role of Deputy Lord Mayor, we used to have this thing where we would do people's citizenship. So they would come to the council house and they would obtain their citizenship. So people from all over the world on a special day, huge for them, would come and collect their citizenship from either the Lord Mayor or the Deputy Lord Mayor. And what was interesting, my wife, she became the Deputy Lady Mayoress, and we would both turn up. I would be suited, she would be in traditional clothes, and we always maintained that traditional look. But you'd have to wear the robes, you'd have to wear the chain. Thankfully, I didn't have to wear the hats. So I had my turban, my crown. And we would walk in the normal entrance and we'd see a whole host of other people from diverse communities. And they were probably thinking, he's probably getting his citizenship as well. And then we would disappear into, it was almost like, this is your life, or like Mr. Ben, the old cartoon, for those people who know what I'm talking about. And we'd disappear into the room, we'd get robed up. And then the next thing you know is that everybody sat down and they're waiting for the deputy or the Lord Mayor to come along. And then the mace bearer would come along and he'd sort of like, make a knock. So there'd be a tap on the floor. And he would say, please be upstanding for the Deputy Lord Mayor of Plymouth, Councillor Chas Singh, and the Deputy Lady Mayoress, Mrs. Saranjit Kaur. And then we would walk through between these two aisles of chairs. And the first thing that would happen, everybody would look and they would double look again. And they were thinking, we thought you were coming to get yours, but you were going to give it to us. And I remember one of the staff, they said to me, they said, how beautiful is that the person who's going to give them their citizenship looks like them. What an ambitious city and vision is that for a person who's coming into this city thinking there's no one else here, that everybody that they went through was white, but the icing on the cake was where someone like you gave them the citizenship. And a few months back, somebody called me from a building site that were just behind a gate in the city centre. And he said, you don't remember me, do you? And I said, oh, look, I meet a lot of people. And he said, you gave me my citizenship. He was actually from Jamaica. And he goes, yours and your wife and my picture getting my citizenship is on my wall. And it's pride of place there, And that's the difference you end up making when you're part of people's really cherished moments, proud moments, that they can connect with you like that. So Deputy Lord Mayor was an amazing 12 months to be able to represent the city.
It's really revealing to hear you talk about the impact of it was how it helped you connect with other people better. Is people of all backgrounds, immigrants and so forth, rather than the more fancy, political careerist type thing that we might associate it with. Actually, it's about for you and then avenue to connect with the common man and help uplift them, which is really endearing thing. Let's get to the nitty-gritty then. So why did you leave the Labour Party?
So one of my things was, and I said at the start, was that I'm really proud of my history, my heritage, my culture, everything that we've contributed to in this country and globally, and I remember I challenged the council and said, if we're here, if we have to come to the area known as Plymouth Hoe to on Remembrance Sunday, why is it that we can't have representation there? And I remember going to the dockyard, HMS Drake, and I went there to the organisers of the Remembrance service. So I put my pitch out to them and I said, this is the 21st century. We're a diverse population. And these were the days of Saeed Awasi, who was talking about Tom, Dick, and Ali. And I'm thinking, well, Sikhs have always been there at the forefront of saying, this is who we are. The Sikhs were the brave. The Sikhs were the valiant. The Sikhs were the most decorated with Victoria Crosses because of their contribution and the number of regiments that were out there. So when I put my request in, I was told afterwards, they said no. And that really hurt. That really hurt to be able to turn around and say, I can't. No, I think the slap in the face was, you can do it afterwards.
Wow.
And that was like, that hit me really hard, to turn around and say, you can do it after. And I thought, why should we be second best? With the contribution we made, why should we be second best? So on the rebound and, thinking outside the box, I thought, okay, if this city can't do that for me, I'll go elsewhere. And I remember picking up the phone to someone in Exeter, which is a city 45 miles away from where we are. And the person who had to make the decision was on his lunch. And they said, once he's had his lunch, he'll call you back. So lo and behold, I get a call back. And the guy turned around and he said to me, he goes, why not? Two simple words, but they meant so much, so much. And for the past number of years now, at the time, there was a lady who was the Lord Mayor of Exeter. And we asked her to say a few words to Desi Blitz, the online newspaper.
Yep.
And she said some real powerful words of encouragement to be able to say that, we welcome Chas Singh to come in and lay the wreath with the dignitaries. So there I am, I'm standing with the chief exec, two officers from Bryce Norton, the recorder, the Lord Mayor of Exeter, and many other influential people. And in that line is all of a sudden we have a number of people, and there I am, singled out, but having the Sikh identity, where all of a sudden all those people who attended the service will suddenly realize that their city has afforded me the opportunity to be able to lay a wreath on behalf of those people who gave their lives for this country's freedom. That was all I asked for. And all I got from my city was, you can do it afterwards. Which wow. Just shook me.
So that was would you say that was the final straw, or was that the beginning of the fractures?
I think there was many others. And then don't forget, I was a big fan of Jeremy Corbyn and the movement that he drove. And I said, you know what? And this is the value of the Labour Party. I'm not interested in what others may think. But this guy was able to have a proven track record. Whatever the media said, the media said. I met him many occasions. And what you saw is what you got. Like you said, some people would be able to sort of like say, we only need to look at what's on the top table. I was more interested in what was happening grassroots. And grassroots was really important. And Jeremy had that. He was able to, we talk about the number of people in the crowds. the increase in membership, all those things were drivers in terms of. Then I went, this is the party for me now, because I always remember saying I didn't join a party within a party, and that's what I found, because I would never understand. This is the left of the party. This is the right of the party. I just looked at it and said, if we're there to represent people, I'm not interested in the left or the right. The main thing is we represent those people who put us in that position. And that's what it was about. So even then, I tried to get Bristol to change their tune. Even in a small town in Cornwall, I even got the Gurkhas to lay a wreath. And that was phenomenal. And when the Nepalese guy came back to me and he said, you don't know how much proud feeling I had walking up with those other people to be able to lay a wreath in the middle of a small town in Cornwall, and how that made me feel. He said that spoke volumes. And I think there was another guy who follows me on Twitter, and he asked me and he said, how do I get my local town to do the same thing? And I said, just go and ask him. And he now lays a wreath at Remembrance Sunday. So I was able to instigate those things, even sat here, even on the bounce of rejection. I'd managed to do all that other stuff at the same time, because I wasn't going to go down easy at all. And then I think Bristol tried to put in some claims that I was being disrespectful. And I thought, hang on a minute, you're talking to me about being disrespectful. How disrespectful are you by refusing me to lay a wreath with the dignitaries at the time to remember their contribution? And you're talking to me about disrespect. So I'd made my decision. I said, you know what? That's it. I'm done. I stood by my principles, what I stood up for, my values, and most importantly, I think my identity, to be able to say, I'm not going to let them get away with that. So I think it was September 2019. And nobody knew that I was going to hand in my resignation. I just made the conscious decision and said, that's it. So I waited until the meeting was going to start, and that was it. My resignation was tendered, and I stood as an independent. And what was interesting in the early days was when I heard from other members of the Labour Party, they said, we've been told not to like your post, your social media. And I thought, look at these big kids. Look at these big kids. I thought, this is life in the Pinder, really. Don't go to their house, don't drink anything, don't do this, don't do that. And I just thought, that's it. And honestly, the release, the freedom I had after leaving the party was immense. It was overwhelming. It was powerful, because I suddenly had a voice. I could get up and I could challenge, whether it was the leader, the cabinet member, the Lord Mayor, the chief executive. I suddenly had a voice for the people that I represented. And there was, Chas Singh Part 2.
That brings us to a great point, actually, to ask specifically about the limitations then that you felt you had whilst you were with the Labour Party. So is it a case of just simply you have to toe the party line and you can't push what you think needs to be raised on behalf of the communities and peoples? Or what else is attached to these to being part of the Labour Party or any party that is a limitation?
I know for a fact that, and I've been saying this to people. I said, look, you can either vote independent or you can put a yes man in. And I can comfortably say yes man, because it is a male candidate who's standing locally against me from the Labour Party. And I said, do you want someone who's going to effectively challenge? Because Now there's going to be so many Labour councillors. Their headache is that everybody will want something done in their area, but it will be limited by what they can afford to do. There's 10 or 12 people who are in the cabinet. They will want to make sure that they keep their face in their community. All the Labour councillors, they're all white. So now all of a sudden we've reverted back to what the city looked like when I first came here. And now I'm looking at it and thinking, actually, from a diverse point of view, who actually can influence anything in that Labour Party right now? And they're in charge of the administration. So I can't go to the Conservatives and challenge them. However, the former leader of the Conservatives, when I resigned, and there was going to be a coalition, and I remember saying, and I still see the former leader now, and I said to him, I said, there is something that I would ask for. And I said, I'd like to be the chair of a committee. And the first thing he said, and obviously, you know, it's always political when they say there's no money. And I said, I don't want the money. I want to be able to, you know, because money, it didn't, nobody, I think when I used to explain the role to people, I said, if you know, and I'm not shy about explaining the allowances, the special responsibility allowance to any member of the public. I said, it's not secret. Why should we keep it a secret? I said, you couldn't live on what they give you as an allowance. You even, with the amount of work you end up doing, you probably get less than minimum wage for the hours you put in, especially if you're dedicated. And the former leader of the Conservatives, who I said to him, I said, what I'd like to do is be chair of the Equalities Working Group. And he said, all right, there you go, Chas. You have the chair of the Equalities Working Group. And then within less than 12 months, we put the communities, so many diverse communities at the forefront. One of the best moments, I think, was the raising of the Romanian flag and celebrating their Grand Union Day. And when the consulate of Romania came to Plymouth, I said to him, I said, how many people attended the event in Bristol? Less than 12. When we had it in Plymouth, we had 250 people attend. We absolutely smashed the expectation. And since then, I mean, I've forged so many positive working relationships within the Romanian community. They even said to me, they said, we will make you an honorary Romanian, you know, because of what you've done for our people. You've made us so proud to live in this city, to work in this city. It's amazing what you, just that one token gesture of the flag raising, it's put us up here. Because the minute you say Romanian, people will think, oh, they're here to take our jobs. Yeah. But he said, now we can stand tall in our city. And he said, we relayed the pictures back to our fellow people in Romania. And they said, you have made us proud. And they said, we didn't do it. Speak to that guy over there. He made it happen, you know. And now they're empowered. And the event has just gone from strength to strength, which is amazing. And that's the empowerment to be able to say, actually, there you go. Here are the tools. Do what I do and make it happen.
So you've been able to kind of push these community agendas rather than party political agendas through being an independent candidate. And that is really interesting to know about, you know, the limitations that you've been able to overcome. But what about any differences in terms of just how you have to work when it comes to being an independent and you have to work within these what is essentially a two-party system, I guess that many would say. How does that work, and what difficulties do you face?
I think even within that two-party system, I still have, you know, if elected, I can still call in something. I can still scrutinize something. I can still challenge something. And what that exposes is the kind of embedded comfortability of those party members thinking, this is easy. Anything we propose will get passed through and everybody will be told to vote yes. All those in favour, yes. All those against, and it will be the opposition. Even if the opposition, the main party, plus the handful of independents, they wouldn't be able to beat a Labour motion. So with that, we're not going to get a decent democracy. We're just going to get a dictatorship. If we say we're going to do this, it will happen. We'll make it happen, regardless. There is no effective challenge. And what I've been hearing on the doors is that, we're done with the Conservatives, but we can't trust Labour. And I say, look, I'm speaking from experience. How can I trust Labour after what they did to me, and how they made me feel, So it's really important, I think, where people will say, well, you're all the same, you're this, you're that. And I say to people, don't waste your vote. Don't even go there and spoil your ballot paper. You can make the difference by electing an independent in there. And I think that's where maybe this is where the politics needs to go, that independent voice, where, this isn't about funding or favour. This is about real, genuine people saying that actually the only interest I have is for the residents that have elected me to serve them.
So
And that's
with that in mind, we are going through a period where we're seeing a massive wave of independent candidates step forward now. You were one of the trendsetters. I spoke to you about this many years ago now, like 2, 3 years ago. But now we're seeing many independent candidates step forward all across the country. What are your thoughts on this? Is this better for the UK political system, and is it better for the Sikh community in terms of the type of representation that we would like in politics?
And I think, and I've been speaking to many people across the country. My DMs suddenly get full because all of a sudden there's a movement. And like you said, back then, people were saying, hang on a minute, there's less than 100 Sikhs who live there. And this guy is out there at the forefront. We've got 100 people who live down the street, and we can't even push ourselves forward to get elected.
Yes,
Or
so
even
true. In
stand.
some areas, yeah,
Yeah.
like Southall, Birmingham, definitely.
So I said, what you've got to do first, you have to, we as Sikhs, we talk about miri piri. We talk about that. Now, we may be good at fighting, but where are we good at in the political world? Where do we stand there? And I think there's a lack of political education within us. It's almost like hereditary that, we've just grown up thinking, yeah, mum, dad voted for Labour and that's it. And that's our politics. But now we contribute to the bigger picture. If we weren't doing that kind of contribution, why would Rishi Sunak or Tony Blair or David Cameron or Theresa May invite us to 10 Downing Street to celebrate Vaisakhi? Because we're making a valuable contribution to the economy of this country. However small the business is, however big the business is, they see that entrepreneurial streak within us that makes us want to succeed. But we can still do that. We can still have that level of success, even without that political affiliation. We can still say we can do this. And that's where I think, by educating the wider communities that actually you can put your own person forward. There's nothing stopping you. But who's going to show them the way? Because the only way they know is Labour or Conservative. And I said, what I'd love to do is a democracy roadshow where I come up and down the country and I say to people, if I can do it here, whether I get elected or not, I'd still want to look at saying democracy roadshow and tell people that this is what you can be capable of. You do not need to rely on the political parties. You have enough people and power within your own areas. And it's not about ghettoizing or just suddenly turning to Sikhs and Sikh politicians. It's about empowerment. If I wanted to put a motion forward now within my own council and say, can I ask the leader of the council to write to the Home Secretary and ask about the steps they're taking for challenging the Indian government, whether it be Khalistan or whether it be Jagtar Singh Johal, I can stand up in council and ask that question. May not have anything to do with, the people of Plymouth, but human rights is everybody's business. It's as simple as that. So if we have to put ourselves and pick out an individual who may be from a Sikh background, then that's what we have to do. But if I
The
was in a
idea,
party political position, I know that I wouldn't be able to do that. And even then, the likes of, no disrespect to Tan or Breathe, it's still put forward as delicately as you could without, it's that tiptoeing of politics to say, listen, we don't want to upset the Indian government. We don't want to upset the Indian voters. Hang on a minute. We're talking about somebody's life. We're talking about, somebody's freedom. Why should we have to tiptoe around that? Because we're affiliated to a party. Why?
the idea of a democracy roadshow is actually very interesting because now when we reshare this interview, as we will do once we're done, I will ensure that we say this is someone with a lot of experience running as an independent candidate for a while now, and somebody that it should be approached for better understanding of how to navigate the political spheres in the UK as an independent candidate. So that's a great idea. And anyone that is listening in, I know that you will always be more than open to discussing these things with them
Yeah.
and helping anyone that you can in these kind of areas. So that is really interesting. We'll get to the last few questions. So just about Sikh representation in general in UK politics. What are your thoughts on it? How does it go? You have just mentioned, I think, something that is very important, that when it comes to, say, situations like Jagtar Singh Johal, who's a British Sikh political prisoner in India, who is coming to 7 years in prison now, there is a categoric thought that the UK government isn't doing enough. And I like the way you put it. People are tiptoeing around trying to deliver these messages. So what do you think about UK Sikh political representation right now?
I mean, there's many an organisation that will put out a link to say that there is a petition that's going around, like the current one at the moment, 40th anniversary.
Genocide, yeah.
Genocide is a word that's used, where it is currently at the moment with what's happening in Gaza, and we look around and we sort of like go, actually, when the genocide was happening 40 years ago in India, where was the voice then? Where was everybody then? Genocide has been occurring for many, many hundreds of years. Human rights abuse, India is top of the table for human rights abuse. And most people are shocked when I explain how Sikhs are being treated in India. This is their plight. This is their story, And maybe because we're further down in the southwest, maybe it doesn't apply. But the most important thing is it's getting the word out, and being able to tell people that this is why we have to have, 40 years of rallies, 40 years, When do we finally get to that point where we can turn around and say justice has been served? But every year it's almost like a rally to say, and you'll be denied again and again and again. That hurts. Where do we then? When do we get to that stage? And it doesn't matter. We can have a number of Sikh politicians who will turn up and have that political affiliation. But what is their real influence within a decision that is so precious to us, that is so personal to us? Because Jagtar Singh Johal could have been anyone's son, any one of our sons. And that's the most important bit, you know. He's there in jail, no charges. They can't work out why. He's being detained unlawfully. But the British government for the last 7 years, and it will be interesting to see what Keir Starmer will say to the Sikhs
Yeah.
whilst he goes out there, you know, begging for those votes and saying, we will do this, we will do this. How do I trust Keir Starmer when he's the king of U-turners? You know, he might as well open a driving school. Say, this is how to do the perfect U-turn. Yeah. But this is a thing, and this is where I can effectively challenge and say that you're not going to do anything here. Doesn't matter how many votes you get, but we can all walk away from that political party and say, actually, we can start our own movement. We can do that. If we are powerful to be where we are right now, in comparison to where our parents were when they came here in the 50s and the 60s, and even before that, we have to use our strength best where it needs to be used.
Final couple of questions now. So firstly, what is next? Obviously the election firstly, but what is coming up for yourself politically?
I think I'm going to be interested to really see, and you know, after I left in May, there was a couple of by-elections that I did. One or two of them I didn't do any leafleting or anything like that. I just said my name will be there. I'll still be involved politically. I'm not gonna walk away, and I'm not gonna let, you know, the institutions sort of institutionalize me and sort of say, you know, that's it, he's gone down, he's not going to come back. And I always say to them, I think you forget who the Sikhs are. And I said, when you're dealing with me, you're dealing with 125,000 behind me. Think of it like that. So I'm going to be interested to see what happens on Thursday when the results come in. So we'll probably know Friday morning, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. It'll give me a chance, you know, if elected, that will be massive because effectively I'll become the first ethnic or Sikh councillor to be elected independently. And to be here in Plymouth, where there are no Sikhs at all in my constituency, will be a massive wake-up call for the Sikhs where they have the numbers, you know. And if it doesn't happen, I don't want to look at if it doesn't happen. I want to look at when it happens. That's the important bit, you know.
Brilliant. So very last question then, regarding the Sikh vote, what do you think the best thing Sikh voters can do in any upcoming general election or local elections too?
I think it goes back to some words of inspiration from Jagraj. Arm yourself with knowledge. Find out about how democracy works. Find out about the political structures. Find out how you can influence those things. Even when I was talking to someone, we were talking about religious education, I said, find out who is your Sikh representative on SACRE, Standing Advisory Council for Religious Education.
Yeah.
That can be a step up. So you can talk about how you can change religious education or even challenge what is being taught in schools. You know, it starts somewhere to get somewhere, you know. So knowledge is power, you know, and even when you look back and sort of like see where Jagraj, the platform that he put us on, and the whole of the Sikhs, and it's still there now, you know. When you look at where basics of Sikhi is, it's what a beautiful thought, you know. It's the seed was laid there, you know. So definitely, I think it is about arming yourself with knowledge. Find out, ask the questions. If in doubt, do your research. You know, speak to other people. if this wasn't happening right now, people would not be sending me messages and saying, I think we need to talk. I think we need to find out what we can do here. You know, locally, what are the structures? What is happening? How can we do it? You know, so go out there and do it. And if anybody needs help, I'm more than happy to help. You know, I don't need to keep this to myself. It's not a superpower. It's about saying, I've got that knowledge. I want to share it, give it to other people like that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time, Chaz Singh. It's been great to
No,
speak to you about running as an independent candidate and how the Sikh vote can be used and the benefits of possibly voting for an independent candidate. Good luck with your upcoming election, and we'll check
thank
back
you
in
so
with
much.
you and see how that goes. But even aside from that, I know that you will always be involved in community seva in one way or another. So thank you for that. And Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa,
ਖਾਲਸਾ
Vaheguru Ji
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ
Ki Fateh.
ਫਤਿਹ
Thank you for your time, Ji.